Today's video is going to be, and it's probably going to be a couple videos, maybe more. It's called The Truth About Dwarfs and Superdwarfs. There's essentially three types of people when it comes to dwarfs and superdwarfs. There's the people that were keeping them prior to the ban in 2014, I believe it was July 2014. There's the people that got into them, namely breeders, right after the ban and a couple years later. We'll get into those reasons. And then there's the new crew, which is essentially all the new people buying into dwarfs and superdwarfs now that didn't really know about these animals prior to the ban, or even really prior to just a few years ago. So the first group of people are the people that were very interested in these animals, very interested in retics as a species, and saw superdwarfs and dwarfs as a good opportunity to work with different localities that weren't going to take up a ton of room and were a lot easier to market than a mainland retic, and it was a much more responsible route to go because of their size. And most of those people still have some kind of dwarf or superdwarf locality that they're working with, and they weren't really swayed too much by the loss of importation because they were just, they didn't use that as an excuse to dump their animals. There was a lot of us that were doing it for years that and weren't really making it that much money off of it because the demand wasn't there for them like it is now. The first year I ever produced superdwarfs was a while ago, at least 10 years. It was over 10 years. I couldn't sell them. They were a hard sell. I took them, I hatched some out and got them eating and took them to Hamburg, and I thought people would be smart enough to buy those up like immediately. And I had them priced at $265 on the table at Hamburg, and I could not sell them. I had a hard time selling those snakes. They were illegal to import. They had reached upwards of $1,000 a piece, $1,500 to $2,000 a pair, and they just kind of stayed there for a little bit. After the ban on importation, the second group of superdwarf and dwarf breeders emerged. This is the group that I think a lot of the old breeders, including myself, I don't want to say don't like, but do kind of have an issue with because of the marketing aspect of it. You see today only one or two names are talked about as the expert, as the only person with the quality animals. They do have these, most of these people do have quality animals, but they weren't doing what we were doing when these snakes weren't worth any money. And I think that's where the disconnect between the old dwarf and superdwarf breeders and the breeders that came in to capitalize after the ban on importation. And something interesting always happens in the reptile industry, and I think it's really just kind of human nature to want what you can't have. Because I remember the day Fish and Wildlife announced that retics were going on the Lacey Act, and my phone and my computer, my Facebook just blew up. Why? I want this, I want this, I want this. And and I told everybody the same thing. I said, you've had the last couple years, I started really focusing on getting as many imports in starting back in 2011 up until the day we couldn't get them in anymore. So it was a good solid 3 years that I really worked on getting these animals in. And they hit me up. They started hitting me up that day. They wanted these animals. And I said, I can't do anything now. You've had 3 years to get these animals off me. And you waited till the last minute when I can't get another shipment in You know, and I had everything prior to that, and you know, it was no longer available. I had Medus, Karampas, Kalatoas, Jamps, Kaiwatis, Solaire, Solas. I even had some Phils. You know, I had the Ternates, the Halmas, Ballies, Sumatrans, Javans, and you know that stuff. Besides what I was keeping, it was pretty much gone. And I'd sold out some Ternates that I later had bought back and traded to get back, and just so I could have a sustainable group. But you know, I think it's human. Like I said, it's human nature to want what you can't, what you can no longer have, and that's really kind of what happened that day. And there's also been this other trend that I wanted to talk about in reptiles. As soon as we lose importation or lose access to something, the price tends to go up. And that's not a criticism, it's just kind of an observation of how economics work. There was a push for some people to recognize that we had just lost importation, so there was a potential for the price to go up, but it couldn't go back up until we got back interstate commerce. So this is kind of an interesting thing. So there wasn't a whole lot of push, a whole lot of motivation at first behind the breeders that wanted to jump on the super dwarf stuff after we lost importation, but it was really when it was looking like we were going to get interstate commerce back. Okay, so now that set the scene for where we're at now with super dwarfs and dwarfs. We have very limited availability for breeding stock. Nothing else can come to the country because of lack of importation. We get interstate commerce back. So now you can sell throughout the country, with the exception of the states that you can't sell to, which is like 9 or 10 now, like roughly 20% of the country that nobody's talking about. And that set the stage for the inflated prices. I'm not criticizing the prices, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying whenever, from an economical standpoint, when you have limited availability, and now it's become this thing that is kind of sought after because you can't get any more. So you know these super dwarfs quickly endorsed, especially what was left of the wild caughts, which isn't many, became these immediate diamonds in the rough for people to start marketing. So like as I was saying, anytime the reptile industry has lost importation, lost whatever, prices have always went up on those animals. I remember seeing years ago seeing Solomon Island monkey-tailed skinks for like $900 or something wholesale, and I was like, why are these this much? Well, you can't really, this was when you really couldn't get them anymore. And I was like, in the 90s you could get them for like $200 in a pet store. Like, why are they so much now? And that was why. That was just a good example of seeing something go up like that that wasn't really worth much until you were told you couldn't get any more. So you have that aspect of it, and then you have the return of interstate commerce, which I said was going, that mainland retics weren't going to get the big bump up that everybody was expecting, and I said it would be berms, not retics, and that's exactly what happened. I hadn't bred berms in like a decade, and I started producing labyrinths just because I like them, and lo and behold, we get importation back. I'm the only person with labyrinths. They went from $100 to $200 snake to, hell, I could have put any price on them. Pretty much I wanted up to about $4,000, but I was letting those, I forget what I was even selling those at, like $1,500 or something. But that was unheard of, and you just look at the price of an anaconda, a green anaconda. That was, that was a dirt cheap snake. There's a gnat in here. It was a dirt cheap snake. Those in yellows, African rocks, you really couldn't give those away. So those were essentially free, and now they're selling $500-$600. So you had to, they were typically $30 on the table at a show, and now they're, 400-500 times what they were. Well, 400 to 500%. At least. Some of them are, going for even more. So that set the stage. So the lack of interstate commerce, the return of the lack of importation, the return of interstate commerce, the fact that super dwarfs and dwarfs had been increasing steadily over the years in price regardless, set the stage for the prices you're seeing now. So if you're trying to understand why super dwarfs cost so much, it's because of that's kind of they're higher than they would have been had we not lost importation. They're significantly higher. They're probably about 200% higher. To give you an idea, when I got in Carampas in early 2014, I was selling those wild caughts at $1,500 a pair. So to give you an idea. But then now you're into your third group, super dwarf keepers. These are the people that didn't know really about these snakes prior to like 2016. A lot of people think these animals are new.